Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sam and today we're talking about my May wrap up. For May, I read 8 books, which is 1 more than I read in April and 7 more than I was supposed to read, but it's okay. So I actually probably should not have tried to read 15 books in May. That was insane. I never should have tried to do one dive for my TBR game. I knew that we were moving. I knew it was going to get chaotic. I knew it was the end of the school year. That was a bad idea. But I did manage to read about half of the books that I was supposed to read. So honestly, that's pretty much a win at this point. So we're going to talk about the 8 books that I read. So before we get into the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon will notify you when I post. Currently I'm posting Sundays and Thursdays, but I might be changing that around a little bit. I'm going to stick with Sundays. I was doing Thursdays. I might do Wednesdays. I'm kind of thinking about fitting a 3rd day in there through the summer, but we'll see. I have not decided yet, but you can expect at least 2 videos a week from me. Alright, so we've got 8 books to talk about, so let's get into it. Okay, so for this month, I was really careful to start writing my reviews down. I've been trying to review books as I read them, like when the book is still fresh in my head, because I find that when I do these wrap-up videos, a lot of times all of my reviews are just, this book was great, I really liked it, the characters were fun, the plot was intriguing, and that's kind of it. And I want to get a little bit more in depth with that. So I've been trying to write things down as I'm reading and right after finishing. I have not done that for every single book in May, but I did try, and I wrote out what I wanted to say for this video to make sure that I would remember things and get a little bit more critical than just, this book was great, you should read it. So let's get into it. First book I read was The Spanish Love Deception. This follows our main character, Catalina Martin, and she needs a date to her sister's wedding. Basically, her sister is getting married and her ex-boyfriend is going to be there, so she wants a date because she's been telling her family about this American boyfriend that she does not have. And one of her coworkers that she cannot stand offers to be her date in exchange for her helping him out with something, and she's extremely reluctant but eventually agrees. So we've got a fake dating, enemies to lovers, a little bit of grumpy sunshine, workplace romance kind of thing going on here. So basically it's like if you take the hating game and mix it with the love hypothesis. Kind of what you get here. This book is very, very long for romance, and that is my number one critique for it. I did give it 4 stars because I did really enjoy it, but it is over 400 pages. It's almost 450 pages, and that is a lot for a contemporary romance. I found it dragged a lot in certain places. However, the story itself is really, really cute. I did really like the characters. They did work really well together. We get a lot of tropes in here. This is if you like romance tropes, a lot of them are in here. We've got fake dating, we've got enemies to lovers, we've got the one bed trope, we've got the slow burn, and each of those tropes is done very well. So if you like one of those tropes or all of those tropes, they're all in here and they're all done well. And the love interest is definitely one that you can fall in love with pretty easily. I did really enjoy him. It wasn't my favorite romance book ever, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. I would probably read it again. So I gave it 4 stars. The next book that I read, I actually think that I lent to my sister. I can't find it. I know I intended to lend it to her and I can't remember if I actually did, but I hope I did because otherwise it's lost. But that is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and this follows our main character Piper, and she is basically an influencer who lives in LA, and she has kind of this wild night that ends in her in jail for the night, and her stepdad has had enough. So he sends her to Washington to basically run this old bar that her dad owned before he died. Her dad was a fisherman, and her mom warns her before she leaves not to get involved with any fishermen because it is such a dangerous job and it will just hurt her in the end. But that's exactly what she does, and she meets one of the fishermen there who is the picture of the grumpy sunshine trope. He is gruff and bearded and literally just the picture of a grumpy person, and she is just sunshiny and heels and dresses and happy all the time, and they had so much chemistry. And it was one of those books where the guy falls first and he falls hard, and then he's just absolutely obsessed with her, and it is just so cute, and I really enjoyed everything about these characters. I thought they had great chemistry. I thought the smut was really well written. I thought that they're different characters. While the main character I thought was a little bit annoying sometimes, I really liked how they were together and the different parts of each other that they brought out. She made him a happier person, and he got her to start loving herself again. And I felt like there was actual character development beyond just the romance. Like, they actually each kind of developed their own character individually and developed their relationship together, and I really like that in a romance novel, so that was really great. I will say Tessa Bailey's writing is not for everyone. I do find a lot of it to be very corny and a little bit cringy, but I did like it enough in this book that I just read right through it. Book number 3 was Legendborn. This is by Tracy Deonn, and it follows our main character, Bree, and she is reeling after the death of her mother, and she was accepted into an early college program at UNC Chapel Hill, and so she and one of her best friends are going to be studying at the university as high schoolers, and they get there, and Bree quickly learns that there is this secret society there that is very interested in her and may be somewhat related to her mother, potentially. There's some sort of connection there, and we've got a lot of like Arthurian legend going on here, a little bit of romance, and basically just a lot of character growth. So this book is very dark academia. It reminded me a lot of like Ninth House. I've also seen it compared a lot to the Mortal Instruments series. I have not read that series. I read that's a lie. I read like a third of the first book like 3 different times. I've never finished it, but I have seen it compared to that, but better. But I definitely see this as like a YA version of Ninth House with like a different plot, but same vibes. I did really, really like Bree as a character. I felt like she was very dynamic. She was very well done. I loved her grief journey. I felt like it was very realistic. It was very raw and dark, but still hopeful. And I just felt like she was a very well-written character and a very interesting character. I was very excited to keep reading from her point of view, and I really enjoyed her story. I also thought that the magic system was very unique. We do get a lot of Arthurian legend in this book, so a lot of it is like borrowed from those legends, but we also get kind of like a different side of it that was developed, I think, by the author. I don't know if that's also taken from other myths, but whether it was taken from myths or developed by the author, it was really well done. I thought that it was integrated into the story very well. It was complex, but I didn't find it confusing. I thought it was very easy to understand while still being very intriguing. There wasn't a lot of info dumping. I felt like the way that the magic system and the world building was explained was very organic for a YA novel, which I think is pretty rare for YA. And it's not perfect, but I do think that it does it very well for a YA novel. I gave this book 4 stars instead of 5 because I did find the love story, while I did enjoy it and I did like it, I thought that the love interest was kind of meh. Like, I liked him, but I wasn't in love with him. And I found him to just kind of be a bland character, a very typical YA love interest character, which isn't a bad thing. I just wasn't wowed by it. And I also thought that the love story was very insta-lovey, which, again, they're teenagers, so I can see that, but I'm just not into insta-love all that much, so I was hoping for a little bit more of a slow burn. Didn't get that, but it really didn't take away from the story as a whole, and I did still enjoy the romance. It just wasn't like my favorite romance ever. Next up, I read The Language of Thorns. This is by Leigh Bardugo, and it is basically a bunch of short stories, little fairy tales, retellings, all set in the Grishaverse, but some of them you'll recognize, like I think like the Little Mermaid's in here, and what I'm assuming is similar to Hansel and Gretel, and then some fairy tales I didn't recognize, but they all have her own twist on them. I think a lot of them are like Russian based, but they're all very, very dark. Very dark. I did find a lot of them really intriguing and really interesting and very dark, which I actually really liked. I thought that that was a nice twist. I don't actually know if some of these original tales were, like, I know some of the original tales are dark, and the way that she twisted them is like a different type of dark, but I really enjoyed it. I don't usually like short stories. I'm not really into that. I've tried so many times to I have like a collection of like the Grimm's fairy tales, and I've never finished it because I'm just not really into short fairy tales. But this book was super short, and I read it during EOC testing while my kids were testing, and I wasn't allowed to do anything but read, so that is how I got through it. I did enjoy it. I gave it like 3.5 stars. It's really just not my thing, but I can appreciate it for what it is, and it was such a fun read because of all of the pictures. There's just so many illustrations throughout the whole thing, and I just really, really enjoyed like the picturesque reading of it. The next book I read is Fix Her Up, also by Tessa Bailey. This is one of those books where I originally gave it 4 stars, but the more I think about it, I consider dropping it down slightly. Maybe. I think we're sitting at maybe like a 3.5 star if we're being really honest here. But this book basically follows our 2 main characters. So we have Georgie, who is a literal clown. Like, that is what she does as a job, is she's a clown for children's parties, and she comes from a family of home renovators, and they kind of look down on her career, and they think of her as very childish, and they don't take her seriously. And that really annoys her. And then we also have Travis Ford, and he is her brother's best friend, and he was a professional baseball player until an injury kind of ended his career, and now he is back in their town and not handling his new situation very well at all. And the story kind of goes from there. We end up with a little bit of fake dating that's supposed to help him get this new job he wants and help people take her seriously. And that's essentially the story. You can imagine where it goes from there, but I thought it was cute. I really liked the story as a romance. It is a very typical little contemporary romance. It's nothing overly new, but it's cute. It's got the pieces you want. It's got like a cute romance. It's got the brother's best friend that I love. It's got the protectiveness and the banter and the things that you like in a romance. However, this is one of those books where Tessa Bailey's writing style really irked me. It was very, very corny and very cringy, especially the dirty talk. I didn't even want to read it, honestly. Like, those were parts that I skimmed, and I don't normally do that. I did find Georgie to be very childish. Like, that was her number one complaint in the whole book, was that people treated her like a child, but she acted like a child through the whole book. And I thought it was really weird that Travis kept like talking about how she was like his little sister, but he was still like sexualizing her and like, yeah, she's like my little sister, but also she's really hot and I want to do all these things to her. And that was a little weird. That being said, if you like cute little brother's best friend romances, you'll probably like it. You'll probably give it at least 3 stars. It's a fun read. I don't know that I would read it again, but I did enjoy it the first time that I read it, and I'm glad I did. Next up, we have Kingdom of the Wicked. This is by Carrie Maniscalco, and it is the first book in her, I guess, Kingdom of the Wicked series, but I read both of these books, and I will talk about the second one. But this book basically follows our main character, Amelia, and she and her twin sister are witches living in Sicily, and I think it's slightly historical, but it's not, the time period isn't really given, but basically nobody can know that they are witches or they could be in danger. And when Victoria is murdered, Amelia decides she has to get revenge, and she calls on one of the 7 princes of hell, which is a really bad thing. She's definitely not supposed to do that, but Wrath is nothing like she thought he was. So, things I loved about this book: Wrath, and Wrath. Wrath made this book. He really did. I loved him. He was everything that I want in a fantasy romance love interest. Anti-hero, super hot, super intriguing, very mysterious. Absolutely loved everything about him. He made this book. I thought that he and Amelia had so much chemistry. They worked so well together. I loved how Amelia's character went from sweet and innocent and naive in the beginning to vengeful and dangerous and determined and ready to avenge her sister's death, and I just really, really loved all of that. I thought that the book was atmospheric, and I loved the setting of Italy. It wasn't a setting that I've read a lot of, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought that the plot was really intriguing. The mystery was compelling. I wanted to know what happened next. I gave this book 5 stars, and the only slight, tiny, not even real complaint, but the only thing that I wish had been just slightly different is the culprit of the mystery was a little bit obvious, and I don't know if it would have been as obvious if I hadn't already read Stalking Jack the Ripper, but you can tell like she pulled the same trick in this series that she did in the other series, and I think since I had already read one, I saw it coming this time. But honestly, I'm not mad about that. I liked the rest of the book so much that I don't care if I already knew who it was from pretty early on. It's totally fine. And then along the same lines, I also read Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second book in that series, and this book is the exact opposite of Second Book Syndrome. This book was phenomenal. I liked it even better than the first book. We've got a slightly new setting, we've got major character development. I just loved where this story was going, and I cannot wait for the third one. I almost wish I had waited to read these books until a little bit later in the summer, because now I have to wait months for the next book, and I don't know how I'm gonna make it that long. My absolute favorite thing about this book was it does jump from YA to NA, and that is exactly what I like in a fantasy romance. I love fantasy romance at the new adult level, and that is what this book delivers. I do wish it had originally been marketed as NA, because I don't think it's fair to YA readers and people who don't like NA to get into a series that's marketed as YA and then suddenly it jumps to NA. I don't think that's fair to readers. But for someone who really likes NA, I love this, and I'm so excited for where this is going. But if you are a strictly YA reader, maybe just be warned that the series is not YA. The first book may be marketed as YA, and I think the second book is as well, but it shouldn't be. But this story gets much darker, much sexier, and much more intriguing, and I'm so ready for book 3. Only complaint about this book was the side characters were very underdeveloped, and I wished we had gotten more from them. But honestly, the only thing I'm focusing on is Wrath. Like, let's just be honest, that's all I care about. So 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in May is Rapsodic. So this is by Laura Thalassa, and I was recommended this book by a coworker. She's been telling me to read it for literally months. She said I would love it, and she was absolutely right. I gave this book 5 stars. I read it on the very last day of May. I didn't think I was going to hit an 8th book in May, and it actually took me a long time to get through the first 50, 60 pages. I read those over the course of a week, and then I finished the rest of the book in 2 hours. Absolutely loved it. This book follows our main character Calypso, and she is a siren in a modern, maybe a little bit futuristic setting of our world. And when she was 15, she killed her stepfather, and there's a whole thing going on there. But basically when it happened, she called on the Bargainer, who is a supernatural person who can take care of things, but you have to make a deal with him. And he makes a deal with her, and they kind of become companions in a way. She is reeling from what she has done, and a lot of different things are happening. She is 15, 16 years old and basically just needs a friend, so she ends up making a lot of deals with him to keep him coming back for companionship. And then we also have the second timeline of 7 years later. It has been 7 years since they have seen each other, and he is now back, and he's ready to cash in those deals. So things that this book did so well and that I liked. We have Faye, which y'all know I love. We have a sexy love interest, which y'all also know I love. Said sexy love interest is an anti-hero, so he ticks all of my boxes, almost all my boxes. He is blonde. Not normally into blonde men, but I will make an exception. I did have differing feelings about the dual timeline because it flips back and forth from before the 7-year separation to after the 7-year separation, and we kind of flip back and forth with each chapter. At first I didn't like it. It was a little bit jarring, and it was taking me a little bit of time to warm up to the Bargainer in both timelines, but I can actually appreciate it now, and once I started getting a little bit further, because I got to fall in love with the Bargainer twice. The old Bargainer, the new Bargainer, I mean, they're kind of they're the same person, but the Bargainer before and the Bargainer after, I got to fall in love with him twice in the same book, and I loved it both times. I also really liked Calypso as a main character. I thought she was really fun. I definitely get some ACOTAR vibes from this, but not in it's It's not really a similar story, it just has a similar vibe, and I don't really know how to explain that. But I would say that this is just a textbook new adult fantasy romance. We've got the intrigue, the sexiness, and I have already ordered the rest of the series. I think it's coming today in the mail because I'm so excited to finish it. Okay, so that is everything that I read in May. 8 books total. Hopefully we read a little bit more in June. I do have 12 books on my June TBR, and I'm kind of planning, because I feel like June's gonna be a really good reading month because it is summer and I am off and this is kind of all I'm doing. I am hoping that I can read the 12 books that I need to read for June and go back and read some of the books I was supposed to read in May. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let y'all know. But if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!